Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery. We are going to start Seder Kodshin. Very difficult stuff, but so rewarding if we're able to crack on through and persevere with Seder Kodshin. We are going to be talking about sacrifices in the main, and the first Masechet Zevachim, is going to start off by talking about how one can invalidate a sacrifice. Invalidate a sacrifice? Invalidate a sacrifice. It is potentially very easy to invalidate a sacrifice. Could you just imagine? You get it all together, you get that animal, you go down to the Beis HaMikdash, and lo and behold, you manage to ruin the whole process. So there are different ways that you can invalidate a korban, a sacrifice. One way is by something called Shelo Lishma. When you sacrifice something in the Beis HaMikdash, you have to have the right mindset and you have to have the right intention, and it has to be designated for the type of sacrifice that you wish to actually offer. And if you get that wrong, you could blow it and you won't fulfill your obligation and you might have to go and do another one. So that is Shelo Lishma, and that is going to be the focus of the first chapter. There are other ones that we will come to, but for now we're going to start just with this concept of Shelo Lishma, where you erroneously or incorrectly designate it for the right purpose. So there are two factors that we have to take into account. Number one, can you continue to process the korban? So, for example, can you still burn the fats if you had done something Shelo Lishma for the wrong sake? Can you still burn the fats? Can you still sprinkle the blood? Can you still eat the meat? Can it still be processed? That's called the kashrus of the sacrifice. And number two is, have they fulfilled their obligation, or do they have to bring it again? So those are the types of things that we're going to be encountering in this perek. We start first of all with chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Says the Mishnah, Kol hazvachim shenizvachu shelo lishma. All sacrifices that get sacrificed shelo lishma, with the wrong intention. We're going to clarify what this all means, but we're starting off by saying that any sacrifice which is slaughtered shelo lishman, and we're going to see there's not just slaughter, but there's actually four processes, four parts of the sacrificial process that this relates to. But we start with slaughtering. So you've slaughtered your sacrifice shelo lishman. The Mishnah says kisher. It is still kosher. It is still fit to continue with the next parts of the process. But, says the Mishnah, Ela shelo alu leba'alim l'shem chava. But the person, the owner of this animal that had been brought to the Beis HaMikdash to sacrifice for whatever reason they were bringing it, they have not fulfilled their obligation, and they are going to have to bring another one. Chutz, except min ha-pesach or min ha-chatas. Except if you were bringing a korban pesach or a korban chatas. We're going to see, by the way, that there are 5 different opinions, and this is our first one. This is the Tana Kama, and the halacha ultimately is going to be like the first position. So what that means is, with the exception of a korban pesach and a korban chatas, you are going to have to bring another sacrifice. Says the Mishnah, clarifies and quantifies this. Ha-pesach bizmano. It's only going to apply to a korban pesach if it's on the 14th of Nisan, the day on which you had to bring a korban pesach. Ve'ha-chatas b'chol zman. And a korban chatas, this would apply to at any time. Fundamentally, let me just give a very superficial explanation of what Shelo Lishma means, but we're going to pave it out more in the Mishnah. If I need to bring a korban pesach, and when I slaughter it, I have in mind that it's actually a completely different type of korban. It's a korban olah, right, or whatever it is. So I have now brought my sacrifice Shelo Lishma. I didn't have the right name on it. I put a different name on my korban. So that's what we're talking about when we say Shelo Lishma. But we're going to flesh all of this out. So the Pesach only at its right time. The Chatas any day of the year, because you can bring a Chatas at any point. that is going to not need to be brought again. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Af Ha'asham. Rabbi Eliezer. So this is now position number 2. He says it's not just the Pesach, it's not just the Chatas, but even an Asham, a shame offering. Even that would be the exception to the rule that we presented at the beginning of the Mishnah. And so, HaPesach Bizmano, the Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, the time when we need to bring it. V'ha'chatas v'ha'asham b'chol zman. And the Chatas and the Asham on any day of the year. And that's because fundamentally he says that the Asham, the shame offering, and the Chatas, the sin offering, they're inextricably linked. And so there are going to be lots of times where the Asham and the Chatas, according to Rabbi Eliezer's world, are going to be always intertwined and operate in the same way according to the same laws. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, to explain what I've just said, Chatas ba'al chet. A sin offering is brought when a person commits a sin. V'ha'asham ba'al chet. And a guilt offering is also brought when a person does a chet, when they transgress. So they are bound together and linked with the same halachas according to Rabbi Eliezer. Just like a sin offering can be invalidated if you process it without giving it the right name, so too a guilt offering will be invalidated if you process it giving it the wrong name. Number Mishnah 2, Mishnah base, the opinion of Yossi ben Choni, the third opinion over here. Yossi ben Choni Omer, Hanishchatim l'shem Pesach or l'shem Chatas psulim. So Yossi ben Choni says, if a person shechts l'shem Pesach, if they shecht any sacrifice on the 14th of Nisan, so a sin offering, a guilt offering, whatever it is, but their intention is that it should be a Korban Pesach, so they give it the wrong status. So if they do that on the 14th of Nisan, possul, it's going to be invalid. U'l'shem chatas, and if they do it for a sin offering, also possul. So it's not going to be able to be processed any further. You've not done your obligation. Going to have to bring another one. That's the opinion of Yossi ben Choni. Shimon Achi Azariah. Shimon, the brother of Azariah. Why is he the only person that we see, or one of the only people who are referred to as a brother rather than as a son of someone? So Azariah was a very rich individual. He supported his brother financially so that he could learn, and he earned this title, therefore, Shimon, the brother of Azariah. What does he say? Number 4, he says, Shechatan l'shem gavoha mehen kasherim. So he says there's a hierarchy that we have to take into account. You've got Kodshe Kodshim, which are very high level holy sacrifices, and you've got Kodshe Kalim, which are a lesser level of sanctity. So if you're going up, then it's going to be kosher. But if you're going down, then it's going to be possible. So he says, Shechatan l'shem gavoha mishen kasherim. If you slaughter and process a sacrifice with the intention of giving it a higher level name, then kosher. It's going to be able to continue the process. L'shem namuch mehein, if you give it a name which is lower than the one you had originally intended, then it's going to be possul. So even though, come what may, you've not fulfilled your obligation, the sacrifice can still be processed if it's given a higher level, but it's going to be completely possul, unfit, and get rid of if you give it a lower status. Ketzah. Let's explain this. How do we understand this? Kodshe Kodshim, Sheshachatan l'shem Kodshim Kalim. If you sacrifice a high level korban, and we'll come to understand this more and more. But let's say you've got an olah, which is burnt entirely, or you've got a chatas and an asham. These are all high level sacrifices. So you take one of these animals. Your intention is to bring an olah, but as you're shechting it, you have in mind that it's going to be for a shlamim, which is low level, possul, psulim, says the Mishnah. Kodshim kalim, if you have low level, sheshachatan l'shem kodshe kodshim, which is slaughtered for the intention of a higher level, kasherim, then it's going to be fit to continue with the burning of the fats, etc., etc., but you've not fulfilled your obligation. Habachor, if you have got a firstborn offering, or you have got tithings, maser behema, I mean, the every 10th animal, sheshachatan l'shem shlamim, which are sacrificed with the intention of it being a shlamim, then kasherim, then it's going to be fit to continue. Now, these are all kochim kalim. These are all lower level sacrifices, but even within that category, there's a hierarchy. Shlamim is at the top, and these other things are at the bottom. So if you're going up within kochim kalim, it's going to be kosher. If not, psul. Ushlamim sheshachatan l'shem bechor or l'shem maseh. And if you've got this shlamim, which is at the top of the food chain for kochim kalim, the lighter level sacrifices, and you're sacrificing for a bechor or for a maaser, the 10th animal, psulim, then you've ruined it. It is unfit for use. Continues the Mishnah in Mishnah Gimel. So we interrupt the regular broadcasting, talking about our 5 opinions, to deal with a Korban Pesach. So as we may know, the right time to bring a Korban Pesach is on the 14th of Nisan, Erev Pesach, in the afternoon. Okay? What if you slaughter it and start to process it in the morning? It's the 14th, it's Erev Pesach, but you're doing it too early. So, is that acceptable or not? And now, if we were to say that it is acceptable, what if you slaughter it without the right intention? So you've got Korban Pesach, and you're going to slaughter it for the sake of it being an olah. So now what? What's the status there? You're doing it too early, and you're doing it shelo lishma. So what does the Mishnah have to say about that? Ha-Pesach sheshachatu b'shacharis. If you slaughter the Korban Pesach in the morning, it's too early. But it's the 14th. Shelo lishma. And you do it with the wrong intention. Rabbi Yehuda machshir ki'ilu nishchat b'shlosha asar. Rabbi Yehoshua says it's not going to fulfill your obligation, but it can still be processed. It doesn't have to be puzzled and completely discarded because you've done it outside of the time. You've done it in the morning. As far as the morning is concerned, it's as if you've done it on the 13th or the 12th or the 11th or in Adar or in Tishrei, whatever it might be. However, Ben Beseira, posel ki'ilu nishchat bein habayim. Ben Beseira is stricter, and he says no. If you've done it in the morning, it's as if you've done it in the afternoon, and so it's going to be completely unfit, and it's going to be puzzle and big problems. Now we come to our 5th shita, our 5th opinion, I think. Amar Shimon ben Azai, Amar Shimon ben Azai. Mekubal ani mipi shivim u'shnayim zakeh. I received the tradition from the 70 members of the Sanhedrin, plus the Av Beis Din, plus the Nasi, the 72 big leaders of the Sanhedrin. B'yom she'ashivu Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah b'yeshiva. And I received this tradition on the day that Elazar ben Azariah was installed as the head of the yeshiva. That was the day that we read about in Maseches Brachos, where they kicked out Rabban Gamliel. They temporarily replaced him with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. This will be familiar to us because we read about it in the Seder. When we talk about Elazar ben Azariah being feeling like he was a 70-year-old man. He was only 17 when this episode happened, and he miraculously grew grey hair when they installed him into this position. So he was like a 70-year-old man. We read about it in Haggadah. So on this day, Shimon ben Azai received the tradition that Shekol Zevachim hanechalim shenizbechu shelo lishma, that all sacrifices that can be eaten. Okay, so this is why he is considered to be a different opinion, because he limits it to sacrifices that can be eaten, which excludes the olah, because that's burnt up in its entirety. Yeah, so all sacrifices that can be eaten, shenizbechu shelo lishma, but they were sacrificed for the wrong intention with the wrong name, kasherim. They are fit to continue with the process. The guy doesn't fulfill his obligation, but they can still go through the flow, the process of the Beis Hamikdash. Ela shelo alu lebalim mishum chava. The owner does not fulfill his obligation. Chutz min ha-pesach u'min ha-chatas, with the exception of a korban pesach and a korban chatas. So this is why it's so strikingly similar to the first position that we saw But as I said, the exception is that he excludes Ola, a burnt up offering. V'lo hosif ben azai ela Ola. So Ben Azai is only including the burnt offering. V'lo hodu lo chachamim. The sages didn't agree. So all of that, just to understand, the first position that we saw, that all sacrifices that get slaughtered for the wrong name, for the wrong intention, they will still be processed, but the guy does not fulfill his obligation. And that's the exception to that rule is the Korban Pesach and the Korban Chatas. Continuing with Mishnah Gimel, Dalet, Mishnah 4. So we said, and this is our final Mishnah of the evening, so we said, we've been talking about sacrificing, slaughtering, all of this time. But as I said, there's actually 4 stages that this applies to. There's shchita, there's the actual slaughtering of the animal. And straight away, once they slaughter an animal and they cut the neck, so now they have to collect the blood. That's called Kabbalas Hadam, collecting, receiving the blood in a bowl. Then you have to transport that blood to the altar, to the Mizbeach. So that's called Holacha, transporting it. And then the final stage is Zrika, sprinkling the dam. Right? So the Mishnah is going to tell us that all 4 of these processes are equally important and can equally be invalidated if they were done shelo lishma. So the Mishnah says, HaPesach v'Chatas, a Korban Pesach and a Korban Chatas, sheshachatan shelo lishma. They were slaughtered for the wrong intention, the wrong name. Kibel v'hilech v'zarak, or they did the collection of the blood, the transporting to the altar, or the sprinkling, shelo lishman. So they might have got slaughtering right, but they did these other 3 wrong. Or lishman v'shelo lishman, or they did some of them right, some of them wrong. Or shelo lishman v'lishman, or they started off wrong, but ended up being right. In all of these instances, whatever permutation, whether you started off in the right way, but you finished off in the wrong way, whether you got part of it wrong, whatever it might be, the Mishnah says, psulim, they are going to be unfit. Keitzad lishman v'shelo lishman. How do I understand what it means to do something lishman, to do something right, and then to do it shelo lishma? L'shem Pesach or l'shem shlamim. This, for example, would be, I've got a Korban Pesach, which I want to sacrifice as a Korban Pesach, but midway through, I change my mind, and I start having the intention that it's going to be for a shlamim, for a peace offering. What about shelo lishman v'lishman? I start off wrong, and I end up right, so I'll do the slaughter, l'shem shlamim, even though it's a Korban Pesach. I'll do that part wrong. And then the other parts, I'll do right, or l'shem Pesach. That is shelo lishman v'lishman. Shehazevach nifsal ba'arba dvarim, because a sacrifice can be disqualified in each of these 4 key stages. Shchita, the slaughtering, v'kibul, the receiving of the blood, v'hiluch, the transporting of the blood, and vazrika, the sprinkling of the blood. Rabbi Shimon machshir behilach. Rabbi Shimon actually says that it's only 3 that this applies to. And if you get it wrong during transporting, it's still going to be kosher, it can still be processed. Shahaya Rabbi Shimon on there, because Rabbi Shimon says, it's impossible to process a sacrifice without the 3 stages of slaughtering, receiving, and sprinkling. Aval, he says, however, efshar shelo bahilach. But it's possible to process a sacrifice without transporting. Why? Shochet v'tzad hamizbeach v'zorek. Because maybe you'll sacrifice the animal right next to the altar. You won't need to transport it anywhere. You can just turn around and sprinkle it. So we don't need to do transporting. So according to Rabbi Shimon, even if you did holacha wrong, it's not going to invalidate the sacrifice. But according to everyone else, it is. Finishing the Mishnah then, Rabbi Eliezer says, "Hamahalech b'makom shehu tzarich lahalech, hamachashava posenes." If you do need to transport it, then you have the potential to get that part of the process wrong and invalidate it. With makom she'ein tzarich lahalech, and if you're in a place where you don't need to transport it because you're right next to the altar, ein hamachashava posenes, then you won't disqualify it. You won't make it puzzle, you won't make it unfit if you have the wrong intention during that part of the process. So it all depends. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we say Mazel tov, everyone, on completing chapter 1. And that is all for tonight. So really well done. Mazel tov on Seder Moed. Really, really exciting. That's all for tonight. We'll see you next time on Mishnah Mastery. Thanks for tuning in. But for now,